already know me, my name's Jen, or Jennifer Kirman, and I am the course lead for health visiting and school nursing, and Katie Mills is my colleague. And before Katie took over the district nursing programme, I used to lead the district nursing programme too. But I'm not a district nurse, so it makes lots of sense that we do have a district nurse do that. I've offered to do a session today because there's two reasons. One, we were asked to, as members of staff, offer sessions that we might find that staff might find useful. But also, when staff do find out about what I'm going to tell you about today, they're very excited about how they can steal this idea for their own programmes. And I can't possibly do it for every single course in the university, but I'm very happy for you to steal my ideas today if you want to. It might be inspiring, it might not be. Do I need to just put the lights down lower at the front, maybe? Is that a bit better? Yeah. Yeah, there are just some slides really just to inspire me to talk to you really. So the thing I'm talking to you about today is how you might want to consider in your programmes other students that might benefit from a topic area across the university. So rather than just thinking of can I just actually find out what subjects you all teach, or are we all nurses here?
I'm an OT.
OT, yes. So OT nursing, nursing as well. So actually this is very relevant for you because I'd like this to go into the nursing programme really, but I haven't been able to find anyone that wants to take it through. I've spoken to Juliet about it, but it needs a little bit of planning, but you can steal my model completely and contacts about this. But one of the things about today's session is thinking about how we can share an aspect of our teaching practice that might benefit other topic areas such as teaching, social work, for example. With a cohort as large as nursing, it's really hard to do really collaborative things with other subjects because of the sheer volume, and that's the problem I've had in including adult nursing, children's nursing, mental health nursing into the thing that I'm talking about today. But definitely it's something that could bring all those. That's all right. Hello. Pre-readiness. There's food outside, Jane. So it's around collaboration across different curriculums in its widest sense, but it's also thinking about when our graduates graduate, who are they going to work with? And one of the things that I identified, so the students that I lead are health visitors, school nurses. When they qualify, they work with midwives, they work with school teachers and social workers. We have every single one of those students based at Oxford Brookes, but we don't teach them together. So it's a really wasted sort of space if we're not using at least some point in the academic year to bring them together, to think about multi-agency working in the classroom really. And that role understanding could begin here too. So it could be that we think a bit more around social workers, how they work with adult nurses, or how children's nurses work with social workers or midwives. It could be something as simple as that. But when we are in a university, in a 3-year programme particularly, in undergraduate nursing, it seems silly not to try to develop role identity and understanding of each other's roles while we're here as well. So a few years ago, I was leading a curriculum, and one of the elements of the curriculum the students wanted was a session on female genital mutilation. So I spoke to a consultant who's called Brenda Kelly. You might know that name, she's a fabulous woman, who's an obstetrician. And Brenda was really generous in her time, came to the university. She put me in touch with somebody called Liz Jones, who worked at the local council, and they offered to do a day for our students. There were about 20 to 30 students, and they did a day on female genital mutilation, violence against women and girls, and what else did they do? Forced marriage and honour-based violence. And it was fantastic, and it felt really selfish not to share it. It felt too good not to spread it wider in terms of who else could benefit from something like this. So we asked the students how they felt about would they want to do this with other students. So from that very one small session, we decided to do a violence against women and girls study day that could bring in other professionals. At the same time, I was working with somebody called Lorna Shires, who's the programme lead for the primary education students at Harcourt Hill, and said, look, have you got anything in your curriculum about mental health, violence against women and girls, sexual exploitation or child sexual exploitation, anything about school nursing in your curriculum? She said no, and I said, why? And she said, I don't know. We don't think about some of those things. We certainly need more of that. So just because I was working across the university and having a few conversations, it started to just develop a little bit. So I think, first of all, you need the space to be able to have conversations with people across the university. And I'm really lucky to have Jane as my manager, who allows me, she doesn't know most of the things I do properly, do you, Jane? I'm not that naughty. But I have the freedom to work across the university sometimes, which is really, really nice. So it started off then as midwives, health visitors and school nurses, and then it cascaded into teachers and social workers. The other people that would really benefit from a day like this, and I'll tell you why this topic area came up in a minute, but are children's nurses, mental health nurses and police. Now, police we don't have here, but there is a college in Oxfordshire, or in Oxford, who would be interested, but they can't fit this into their curriculum. But we already have 170 students in these groups already, and trying to accommodate them in any lecture hall or anywhere is really hard, as you know, doing undergraduate studies. So it's really hard to get children's nurses and mental health nurses into this particular bubble of an idea, because it doesn't fit with the curriculum very well. It's hard enough to get everyone to come in on the same day, which doesn't interrupt dissertations, interview season, or practice days. So we had some logistical sort of issues when we first started doing this about 4 years ago. So the reason that we had, I mean, as you can see, it was sort of embryonic. It kind of came from a very small thing and went big. It had to be something that was a shared element of interest. So if it's something you wanted to adapt yourself, this is a very, very useful study day as it is that you could steal. But if you wanted to think about doing something across the curriculums, it has to map everyone's curriculum, and that's the challenge, because to make something like this successful, for people to come, it needs to be embedded in a curriculum on Moodle. Staff need to know about it, and it needs to be something that's compulsory rather than optional to make that parity of student experience strong. So the subjects we thought strongly, particularly because Operation Bullfinch, are you aware of the child sexual exploitation case that happened in Oxfordshire? So in Cowley we've got quite a lot of issues around human trafficking, prostitution, child prostitution and sexual exploitation. There was a huge media, it was a huge court case recently, about 2 or 3 years ago, but it's had massive implications for Oxfordshire and how they safeguard children. So it seemed a common sense approach to actually think about all the people that work in the 0 to 19 spectrum to bring them in the same classroom together, and that's how this kind of was shaped really. One thing as well was that the local council had a strategy for this too, which had some money towards it. So if you were wanting to bring something new into the curriculum like this, there's usually a national agenda somewhere around something like domestic violence, or whether it's to do with child sexual exploitation. And think with, I'm careful how I choose my words really, but because of what's happened in the media, Jimmy Savile, and what's happening now, there are things that come out of that which mean that they become topical agendas for local policy, which often comes with a little bit of money as well. So keep an eye out for things that might have money attached, because it can help you with venues, and I'll go on to that in a moment really. So what we really wanted to do is think about how we could stimulate a multi-agency approach to this. So we had, on our very, very first one, I'll tell you about that in a moment, we had the local council lead it and pay for the local town hall for the event and coffee and tea. We couldn't do that, can't do that every year, so we've adapted it to be a university-based thing now, but at first there was money attached to it, which was great. So we identified our common interest. We mapped it to each of our curriculums, so once we'd got the stakeholders involved across the university, we were able to identify where something like this would fit in the curriculum. And in the first year we did this, we put it into semester 2, and what we found was it clashed with interviews and dissertations, and students chose not to come. And even though we'd paid for this gorgeous venue and they'd got coffee and tea, some people didn't benefit from that. So we couldn't plan properly if we didn't have the right amount of students there. We wanted to make sure that when people were there, that they were talking to each other as well, and that's something we didn't get right to begin with. So the first year we planned it, we did it in Oxford Town Hall, which is on St Alders? Oldgate. I'm not Oxfordshire based, you can tell, can't you? I'm not growing up round here. And it's a gorgeous, gorgeous venue, but it was drafty, it was wintry, wasn't it? It was beautiful, and we set them up like they were a wedding on these multi-agency tables. But we'd planned for students to come that were so many of those, and I'd done table plans, seating plans, so that we had a mixture of students on every table. And when 20 students didn't come, it meant we had tables that weren't multi-agency, so it really limited that. So that was one of the first problems we had the first year we did it. And the students, because of the venue, we had one venue, we spoke at the students for a full day about really horrific issues. I'll tell you about those issues in a moment. So the violence against women and girls sort of theme is really, really horrific. It's really harrowing. And the way we did it the first year, it just felt a little bit like we were telling them everything, and the students were just brainwashed, or they were just shocked, weren't they, Jane? It's too much information to just tell students. We needed some discussion. And although we had requested when we'd organised this day, we'd kind of spoken to the facilitators of the day, which were the council, can we make sure there's some tabletop activities that they get to know each other? They hadn't really planned that very well. So there's been lots to learn over a 4-year period. So what I'm going to show you in a minute is where we are now 4 years later. And this is what you can steal from us as well. So we did manage to have some resources that first year, which was what I was saying, really. So the planning of it, the first year was very much around the local council going, oh, you're ticking our box, because we have a box to say that we're working with apprenticeships and undergraduate students. So they were really excited that they could work with us. And that's where they got very involved in the planning. So our very first year, Oxford County Council got really, really, really involved. And they wanted to be in control of the study day, which gave us very little control, which actually didn't help us, did it, Jane? So what came from that first session when we had an evaluation session is this is really great, but we need to change it. And we wanted it to be an annual thing. We didn't want it to be a one-off. So it meant for example, every second year midwife does it, so that it goes through the curriculum. Every third year, it fits into the curriculum for different years for different students. Every third year undergraduate primary education student does it. Every health visiting student does it in their year. Every social work student does it in their second year, I think it is. It's only this year that social worker students have made it compulsory because the teaching staff weren't engaged. They didn't see the value in it. It was optional, but this year the teaching staff have been involved. They watched it, they came and went, oh my God, this is amazing. So if you're planning something like this, it's about making it compulsory for teaching staff to be involved in the planning as well. Because if the teaching staff aren't involved in the planning, they can't sell the idea or the concept to students as well. Have I lost you so far? I've been a bit vague, haven't I, suppose? No? So what we did was we developed something called, you might have heard me talk before about Google Sites. Basically, Google have a free website design tool called a Google Site. So we designed a website for students. I'll just make this slightly bigger for you. So students have, it goes onto everyone's Moodle page, and it has a registration section here where students register. Now we have, rather than talking at students, I'll show you in a moment, we have workshops that students can dip in and out of throughout the day, so they get to choose their workshop throughout the day. It means that students are committed because they have to sign up. They have to have read the website to sign up as well. There's an online evaluation form as part of the website, which is a Google form, and at the end of that as well, they get all of their presentation PowerPoints put on here too. So there's details around the venue, and it means that we don't have to communicate other than just one place for all these different cohorts, which is great. So there's a section about venue details, and we now do the session at Marston Road here, and there's sections here about how to access the campus, Marston Road website, that the lunch facilities here are a little limited. So make sure that they can actually either bring their own lunch or make sure, we do let the canteen know that there's a large event happening. That's a good thing to do if you can. Venue content. There's a section on content. So here it gives them the agenda for the full day, what time everything is, and we give them 5 workshops. So I'll just hand this out to you now, which is the workshop. This is exactly the agenda we used this year. Okay, so I think, yes, you've seen it as well, haven't you, Jane? So the students basically arrive on the day, and they are, that we use, the great thing is, on a top tip, number 1, on a Friday, the lecture hall here, you can usually book it for a large venue like this. 2 years ago, I didn't know how to manipulate the system, but I do now. If you want to do something that's a one-off event in the university, you can't do that, you can't plan a room until all of the teaching is planned. So you can't plan ahead at all for rooms or where you're going to do things. If you add something onto your module, you can do anything. So even though that my module's only got 20 students, I was able to add this onto my module and add 170 students on a day that I don't teach. So that's the way to book a room for a one-off event for more students than you ever need. So what I did was I booked the large lecture hall on a Friday for the whole day, and then I booked some breakout rooms as well. The year before, I couldn't plan any of this until really last minute, and it was very stressful for me, and I didn't want that this year with this, but also I worked out how to manipulate the system. So in the first instance, the students come in and they have an overview of violence against women and girls, and there's a little bit around there about domestic violence, stalking and harassment, and that's about an hour to get them into the mood. And throughout the whole of the session, throughout the day, we are very consistent in this is a really heavy day. So on our website, which I'll show you again in a minute, there's a section for self-care. So we signpost to student support services and self-help websites. Because what we do know is that this isn't just these issues we talk about on the study today aren't just associated with the populations we work with. Our student populations have these issues, and it brings up a whole load of issues. So in light of that, last year we decided that because we didn't know what we were doing with these students, we're going home after this, and we just let them go. And it was a Friday, and we were like, oh, they're shell-shocked. What do we do with them? So that's had an effect on two things. Number one, we have student support coordinators that come on the day. They live it, they feel it, they know the subjects, and they're ready then to pick up the pieces if they need to. And the last thing is, on the very last part of the day, we have something called the programme-specific groups. So at the end of the day, we get all the students back in their programme groups, and then we go through, and I'll talk about what we do at the end of the day. How do you feel? How was today? How does it link to your profession? What have you learned? How are you going to look after yourself this weekend? Does anyone need any help? And the student coordinators are with us there. And obviously this is going to be recorded, but this year we had a student, we're very vague in the details, who came to this event, and on the Monday went to go and see her academic advisor and said, thank you so much, I needed that. I've just put my mother into a shelter. I've now got some free student accommodation because we've been beaten by my father for the last 10 years, and I didn't want to leave home, so I've done my course in Oxford to stay with my mother, but now I've made sure she's in a safe place, and I'm now safe, and I wouldn't have done that without this course. So that's just one example that we know about that was quite profound. We've helped the students, but actually she said that's really impacted on my practice. And Guard was just outside now when a midwife said, thank you so much for this day, it was amazing, we really enjoyed it. So at the end of the day, we really value now this opportunity to get them back and say, oh, do you feel safe? Are you okay? What was the learning for you? So we've come up with a little, we wanted to make sure that all the facilitators were offering the same thing. So there's a final note, final facilitator session. There's two there for you too, some more for Jane. Where we try to just make sure there's some structure to that. So how was your day? And the issues that we could explore with them are, do you feel more confident? I mean, the whole purpose was that we wanted them to make sure they felt confident in how they deal with the disclosure, how they do, or where would they go, and what would they do in their profession. We asked them at the end if they would say what they'd learned at the end of the day, something new, something valuable, but also how they were going to look after themselves. And what I've learned is that my students have drinking issues. Most of them wrote, I'm going to have a drink, or there was gin. It was all very alcoholic related, so I'll deal with that in my cohort. But the other students that came forward were just so passionate about how this had really, but I think we've lost that in previous years by letting the students go and drink, and then maybe lose that impact over the week. And when they fill out their evaluation form later, they're probably not feeding back those fresh, exciting feelings. I mean, it's a really harrowing day, but we felt as though that kind of pastoral care as part of this was very, very important. So that's something we've learned. So going back to our agenda then, the students come in for a large lecture, and then they're able to choose 3 subject specific. So if they're a school teacher, they might want to do something on sexting and the law. So the sexting and the law covers topics like it's illegal to send a nude photograph of yourself if you're under 18 to actually send one, and it's illegal to ask for one as well from anybody. So there's some really interesting things. There's a rape section, which is awful really, a rape section, and only 6% of people who actually get to the point of court, 6% of rapes end up in a prosecution. It's just horrific, but these are things that are really horrific. We talk about language not to use and what to use, what to expect, how people disclose, what kind of behaviour people would come forward with. So the topics are female genital mutilation, we make our, all the health visitors and school nurses go to that one, because we have a follow-up session in semester 2 which builds from that, so we make them all do that. Then we have a sexual consent and violence session, sexual exploitation, trafficking and slavery. We had a problem this year where the person didn't actually turn up, but every year you'll have a problem. But we coped with that. Sexual exploitation, grooming, the internet and social media, and sexting and the law, and revenge porn. So they're all quite interesting topics. So the students can choose 3 of those in the day, and then they move around, and then they come back, and then after lunch they have a really, really horrific session which is around honour-based marriage, honour-based violence, forced marriage, and false marriage, and that's quite horrific. Now, we've changed our facilitators over the years as well, and we've had facilitators before that have been so confident in these topic areas that the way that they relay this is quite brutal, and it's quite shocking, and there needs to be an element of sensitivity in how we deal with the messages as well, and also cultural sensitivity in the fact that if we make stereotypical, if we make our teaching stereotypical that this only happens to these communities, it can seem that we're being, well, it doesn't seem very right and fair.
Especially as there were members of those communities in the audience.
In the audience, and that was the complaint in the first year, wasn't it, where the videos around honour-based violence were very much from different countries. There aren't many videos of people being stoned to death here, because but it does happen here. So we've had to adapt our language over the years while we've perfected this, and it's been the best year we've ever had for feedback saying how well we got it right. It's taken us 4 years to get this very sensitive subject area delivered in a way that's been, and it was really good this year, wasn't it? So this is how our day looks. So on our website we've got a section which says here, looking after yourself. So we just want them to know that this is a really sort of an upsetting day. There are some links here for resourcing and counselling. I met with Martha yesterday, our student subject coordinator, and she said over the last 3 years, 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 students have come afterwards because it's stimulated something in them that's been quite, not only that they experienced some of these things, but they found this day quite shocking, and that stimulated them to come. Not only, I want to come for help because this has been brilliant, but more of the, I'm shocked by this, I need help, it's brought something back to me. I thought I'd dealt with it, but I haven't. Rather than, thank you for showing me a signpost, and I'm come to see you because I need help. So there's a difference there, I think. So that kind of picking up the pieces, they said, we've had no one this year at all. So I think we've put the structures in, and we've had more attendance than we've ever had before because we've made it compulsory this year. So we've got a section here for resources. So after the event, they can have all of these resources here from the what's the word, sessions. But we always have sessions on here on further reading before they actually come as well. There's some TV footage links on here as well. So the students can actually do a bit more reading, and they've always got my contact details to make sure if they don't feel safe. Once they've filled out an evaluation form, which is basically just there's a few links to it, but they fill out an online evaluation form, which is basically just a Google link. They've got to put their student account in, so that there are no names, but I can find out who they are with their numbers if I wanted to. It means that then we can look at which cohorts have actually completed the evaluation. They get a certificate of attendance once they've done the forms. We're trying to make sure we take those student feedback. Well, we want to take it seriously, really. You can only do that if you've got enough feedback to do. So, just going back to my presentation a bit over here. I'll just open the other one, sorry. This was the first year, so this was this gorgeous venue. And as you can see, we thought all the students would be on tables, all multi-agency. It was a great idea, but it didn't work so well. It was a lot of didactic telling. It needed to be more interactive. They needed to physically get up and move between the rooms to get out of this horrific topic areas.
It wasn't feasible, was it?
No.
Because it was just one big room.
No. And the tabletop discussion was slightly limited by time. And also, what we tried to do is make sure our postgraduate students were placed on every single table, knowing that our postgraduate students might, number one, seem more, it might limit conversation if there were more of them than a couple, because they might be seen to be superior in an educational way, knowledgeable because they were already practicing nurses. but we wanted them to facilitate discussion on the tables to make sure that the undergraduate students felt valuable and contributed. So we put the postgraduates all around to make sure that they facilitated group discussion, and they did to the most degree, but the students felt back that actually they would have liked to have had more time to learn what roles they all had, and so we've tried to take that on board now as well. So the first evaluation was positively received. However, they said it needed to be earlier in the year, so we've now moved it into semester 1. So it happens at around week 10 or week 9 in semester 1 every year, and that's now set into a pattern. So we do it on a Friday every year, and now as teaching teams we're all familiar with that. It's become embedded in our programmes now. The mix of students on the tables didn't work very well, so what we've done now is the workshops weren't there before, so we've introduced these workshops. When people come into each workshop has an agenda as well. We need to identify who the people are so that they can all look around. There's usually a quiz to try and establish baseline knowledge, to make it a bit more inclusive. The facilitator is aware of who's going to be in their classroom, because we let them know because they book on, so they know how to direct their audience. If they've got a whole classroom just of midwives, then they know that they can just talk about midwifery, but they need to be aware that they have examples of school teachers, social workers, and that's worked really, really well now. The venue is here. The venue has had really mixed feelings. The students, when it was off-site, said they felt really valued. They felt like a continued professional development day. They felt really professional and grown up. It's just really hard. You can't afford to do that as part of generally a curriculum. And we've got fabulous teaching facilities if you can put it onto your module room booking. Do it in advance. So, I mean, we've got great facilities here. I always thought we could do it at Gypsy Lane, because Harcourt Hill don't go to Gypsy Lane very often, and neither do the undergraduates. It would have been nice to do it in the big John Henry Brooks, but you can't book that room very, very easily at all. So it had to be here, which works actually. I've talked about this, but it's very sensitive, and we had to work on who delivered. So the first year we did it, we didn't have contacts, we didn't know who to ask. We've now got a full range of contacts, and we can be pickier about who we ask. And we've actually now got some very, very good speakers. And we're very precise about what we want. So we're very directive about the language that's used and how we want students to feel in the day. We didn't know that. We didn't know what we didn't know when we started this, but we definitely do now. More group work. So we don't do tabletop work now. It's more group working in groups, but not big tables, because we use our teaching facilities here. The rooms here aren't always very easy. You've got to work with what you've got, haven't you, really? That's limited us slightly. The police were invited, and lots of people said we should have had the police here. But number one, 170 students logistically is really hard to manage around the building. So we thought that's got to be our cap, really. And we could have, I've had lots of complaints from students who live with midwives or social workers saying, why haven't I been invited to this? Why don't I know about this? Or walked past, what's this about? I'm really excited. Oh, can't I come? Children's nurses, mental health nurses and adult nurses. So we've said to the students, go back and tell your teaching team that you want something like this, and I'll keep telling people through these events. I have spoken to Juliet about this and said, this is the format, you can have it. But it's really difficult for me. I can't do this for the whole university. It's really hard to plan. Well, it's not now, actually, because I've planned it all and you can have all my details. Kate, maybe you could do this for pre-reg.
I was just thinking. Yeah, with Kathy and Carrie's help.
Yay! There we go. I've inspired you. So this year is what we've got now. So we have this fabulous day where we have a full day, 3 workshops, and we have this sort of a session at the end where we bring people together, and it's never been more evaluated than so well evaluated. The students were there were no negative comments this year at all, none.
Even though one person didn't turn up, they didn't seem to mind that.
No, and the rooms, it meant the students had to go into the other workshops, and the room, we broke all health and safety, fire regulations. I'm sure we did in all rooms. I've been filmed, so I've just put myself away. We squeezed students in, but they didn't mind. They understood. Maybe because I was pregnant that they were really forgiving of me, maybe.
It wasn't your fault. The person just didn't let you know that they weren't going to come.
No, and they changed their job but didn't have an out of office on, so That was the problem. But it has made us think we need to triple check and check again, so it doesn't happen. Last year it was rooms. I was just going home from work on the Thursday night. I thought, I'm just going to make sure the rooms are okay. None of the rooms were booked. They booked them for the wrong month. So I had to steal the rooms back from, fortunately there was an open day on the Saturday, and they'd booked all the rooms out, so thank goodness. But I was here till 7 o'clock at night the night before and just realised, oh my God, what we're going to do. So that's why this year it was important to put on the module room bookings. So I was organised, and I checked on a Monday rather than a Thursday. So now we have this really interactive day, and the final thing is we've added a new group of students this year. So our district nursing students, we're moving towards more of a preventative model of looking at community care. So not just being so reactive and looking at our caseloads, but thinking about how we could prevent some illnesses as well through Every Contact Counts, but also we're part of a much wider team. We're looking after families. So things like female genital mutilation, there's grandchildren in those homes. There's grandparents with some really strong views around this. Isn't it? There are also people who've had female genital mutilation on district nursing caseloads. So this was a really good thing to invite district nurses to. So we did, and we made it an optional public health day because they can do these optional days. And how many came? About 7.
It was about 7. Yeah.
And they thought it was amazing. But also, I think the other thing that I've said before is that these students aren't just students and professionals. They have their own lives and families, and they took this back to their own families and their children, and it's kind of just making them a bit more aware of these issues in their community. Shocking as though the topics are, they're happening in our area. Oxford is somewhere you think is quite middle class, white. It's a female genital mutilation hotspot in the country. People just don't know this, but it's really important to talk about it, really. So our students are very happy, very, very happy. And this is a model, basically, that, well, number one, there's 2 sides to this. You can have this. You can have all my contact details. You can adapt this to the nursing programme, and the students want it. They really want this. And we can help you do that. Or it could be another topic area in the model of how to plan and get something that's cross-faculty. It's difficult for something as large as nursing to think about how you would increase your numbers by adding extra students in, but it could be optional days. And I know you've got a new curriculum now, but in the teaching programme, in a week in January, they have something called something, I want to say Skills Week. It's an optional week where there's loads of workshops across the whole of the week where students come in and learn different things. And it could be around learning disabilities, children with Down syndrome, or it could be to do with domestic violence, domestic abuse, or faith. It could be to do with extremism, but things that they haven't put in the curriculum that they put in there because they think, actually, we've no room for this. We want to talk about it, but it's more of a workshop-y type thing. So that's another way of doing something like this. But I've talked at you quite a lot now. Does anybody got any comments or want to share or say anything or ask anything?
I think it has developed very well over 4 years, hasn't it?
It has been intensive development, yeah. Well, actually it's 3 years, but we did it twice in 1 year because we did it in semester 2, and then in that September we did it again, didn't we? So it's been 4 sessions over 3 years, but we've really listened to feedback to develop it as it is now, and I think it just shows you can't get things right straight away, and that's okay. But now we've tweaked with it. You could easily do this for your pre-reg students, couldn't you?
What was the limit? The room sizes, was that your limitation for numbers in reality?
Yeah, and so once you've worked out who you want to invite and worked out how many, then you've got to work out the worst case scenario, the smallest lecture theatre you can get for if you do group sessions. We could have had as many breakout rooms as we wanted. But the lecture hall was, if we added another cohort of 30 students, it would have probably taken us over to 200. Now, I don't know what the Jane Asher one is now.
No idea what
is it 210?
Yeah, it's 200 and something.
200 and something.
You've also got to think about how many facilitators you're going to get.
Yeah.
And just the logistics of it all.
So we thought that 5 workshops, if we gave too much choice, we thought that the students would, well, we originally put 4 choices in, but then we thought, actually, there's too many students, we're going to have 5 for the numbers. So the numbers, the rooms and the facilitators were the issue. We didn't want them to have too much choice so that they felt as though we were losing out. But actually, this year, the students have told us, and the change for next year is, we've nailed it in so many other ways, they don't want 3 workshops, they just want 2, because they want longer workshops. They like the subject so much, they felt as though they wanted to talk more. So we've added an extra 15 minutes on to each workshop, but we've shortened, we've only given them 2 choices. Because we, on the feedback during the sessions, we said, if we did that, it came up in 3 of the feedback sessions, you'd only have 2 choices. They said it's okay, because we've got the presentations, and the facilitator said yesterday at our evaluation session, or the day before I think, wasn't it? It's okay, because what we did, and we didn't do this in ours, and I've learnt from this now, in the midwifery session, they got all the students to feedback what their favourite sessions were and what they learnt, not just on flip chart, on sticky paper, but actually physically, vocally, so that even if the student didn't go to that session, they picked something up from it. So that's what we'll add next year as well to the facilitating of the last bit, is what would you share with your colleagues who couldn't be there, and then that learning can still happen in those other groups. And if they couldn't all get there, what we've said is, so for example, in the teaching curriculum, not all the students could get, because they were too late booking on, the female genital mutilation session. They couldn't all get into the room. There were 2 reasons for this. One is that they were too late to book on, and then they couldn't get to the room quick enough before it filled up because we had too many students. So they're going to put the FGM session into their skills week this year. So if there are, in the group sessions, if the students, let's just say the midwife said, none of us managed to get to this one, and actually now we think we really need it, the teaching team can be reactive and go, right, well, we'll put that into semester 2's curriculum somewhere, or we'll put that into a curriculum for you. You've identified a gap now for us. That's a long answer.
Similar in a way to, in a major way compared to our minor way, collaborative nursing practice.
Yeah.
And what we're involved in collaborative nursing practice for second years, and the seminar leaders have each had to present a workshop, and the students have been able to book online and everything.
Brilliant.
With different themes. So the one that we did last week or the week before was vulnerable populations, and then the one before that was depression and mental health.
That's great. And if you think about the size of your teaching team, you've got the expertise within your teaching team to do that, haven't you? I don't. I don't have those things, but
external people are very keen to help.
Yeah, I haven't had to pay for any of them. The only thing that is paid for is food for the speakers. The social work team have a budget of £10 a head for students if they can do something classed as a workshop. So they give us £300 or so a year. And we just make sure that the facilitators have got some lunch, because we thought that was really important for the facilitators to feel loved. We give them a car parking space, and that's all we do. And they come, but if we were to mimic this over the whole university and they had to come in 4 times a year, that would change things, I think, for them. But it gets to tick their box, because it's such a great thing for them to say that they've done. Also, because we have a teaching department here, they're Ofsteded. So last year the students that came went out for their interviews, and during the interviews for teaching in Oxfordshire and beyond, one of the questions was, what's most inspired you about your teaching year, and what have you taken on board? And more than half the students that were interviewed mentioned this. So that was picked up in the Ofsted report through the headmaster's reports. They were just so pleased that we were offering this great opportunity in the university, but also how it impacted on their employability. They were seen to be better graduates, or more thoughtful, rounded graduates than others. So the Ofsted report came out in November, and this particular day has been noted as an outstanding area of practice, which I just think is fabulous, to show that something we're doing here, which started off as a really small thing in a classroom, has affected not only students who are helping their own families get out of difficult situations, but other families too. I sat behind a group of girls who were wearing hijabs. Now this might sound, but I was listening to their conversations, and it was it really brought a lot of stuff home to them when they were doing the forced marriage section. They were looking at each other, talking, passing notes, and there was a moment of recognition that what was happening wasn't right for them. And I think we think these things happen to other people, but they're happening to our students. And that's 170 people's lives we've touched in some way, which is quite profound as well, isn't it, really? So that's my inspiration for the weekend.
Thank you. Thanks very much.